Reflection, Chapter 12. Shishi's regal fierceness melted away as he accidentally inhaled the scent of the tea. He sighed. Oranges and jasmine, with a hint of ginger. Mulan had to admit the tea's aroma was heavenly. The scent wafted into the air, enveloping her in a warm, invisible embrace. The smell made her feel safe. She looked into her teacup and saw herself smiling rather idiotically. Behind her, one of the brass lanterns hanging from the ceiling appeared in the tea's reflection, and she thought she saw King Yama's face appear, as it had on each of the doors they found in Daiyu. Maybe there was a portal inside this very pavilion. She blinked, pushed her teacup away, and turned back to look at the lantern. King Yama's face disappeared, and the light inside the lantern flickered and danced. The brass caught the light and took a spectrum of mesmerizing colors. Mulan blinked, and the lantern returned to how it had been when she first entered the pavilion. No King Yama, no strange colors. Ping? Lao Lao prodded. Mulan's jaw hung agape. Her answer, which had been clear as day only a second ago, fled from her lips. Her brows furrowed. What was the matter with her? She couldn't remember. Stay and have some tea, the old woman said, placing Mulan's cup in her palm. And I'll tell you about Daiyu. I've been here a long time, you know. Mulan stared at the steaming liquid, watching the dried leaves swirl it to the bottom. How beautiful the tea looked. She'd never seen teas so colorful. Reds and pinks swirled in with amber and blue, like the mesmerizing patterns on a butterfly. Do tell, Shishi slurred. I love a good story. Mulan tore her gaze from the tea. Her head felt light, dizzy. What was she trying to remember? A warning, a story, something. She touched the side of her head, trying to keep it from throbbing. Shang had inhaled the fragrance of the tea. She could tell because his dark eyes looked glassy, and he grimaced as if he were trying to fight off the dizziness too. What was it that I had to remember? Something about not eating, not drinking in Daiyu. Why? Because it would be a risk. Who had told her this? Shishi? Yes, he'd warned her. But that wasn't what she struggled to remember. It was something about the tea. The tea. General Li had told her that Shang would have to drink a tea that would make him forget his past life. Was that what she just smelled? Then the old lady was Miang Po, the Lady of Forgetfulness, and they were in her pavilion. Mulan's hands trembled, and she almost dropped the cup. She placed her hand over the tea so its smell wouldn't make her forget anymore. Her mind raced. They had to get out of here, but how? Shishi had that dreamy grin on his face. He hadn't seemed to have moved to drink the tea, to Mulan's relief, but once his stupor wore off, she would have no doubt he would. And Shang. It's my favorite 5-flavored tea, Miang Po was saying to him. Have a sip, Captain. No, we couldn't drink. Come on, Mulan, you had no problem being clumsy back home. You spilled tea all over the matchmaker and made a fool of yourself in front of the whole village. Miang Po is not an old lady. She's a cunning servant of King Yama. Mulan elbowed Shang. Her elbows went straight through his spirit, but it knocked the cup out of his hands. It shattered to the ground. To her relief, Shang's eyes cleared. She shot him a look. Play along, it read. I'm so sorry, I'm clumsy. Shang always said I was the worst soldier in the regiment. She faked a laugh. Didn't you, Shang? Mulan raised an eyebrow, and then he forced a laugh too. The worst. Miang Po dipped her hand in her pocket, and it resurfaced with yet another cup. Not to fret. I have plenty of tea. Her voice was still warm, but an undertone of impatience prickled her words. I'll refill your cup, but Ping, yours is still full. Drink up. She's a sharp one, Mulan thought. She pretended to sip, but when Miang Po wasn't looking, Mulan threw the cup's contents over her shoulder. She flicked her eyes at Shang, and he nodded. How do you make your tea? Mulan asked, trying to buy time. It smells so heavenly. Do you grow the leaves yourself, or do they come from another part of Daiyu? I grow them myself, Miang Po said, pouring Shang a fresh cup. I don't venture out of my garden often. Why is that? Are you trapped here? No, it's just that I prefer it here. It's so peaceful, you see. Too peaceful, Mulan thought. No birds, no insects, only fish. She leaned over to watch the carp swimming beside the pavilion. There's something wrong about this place. She held her breath. We really shouldn't keep you any longer. Worry not, young Ping. I have all the time in the world. She's right, Shishi agreed. We should stay here longer. Trust me, most of Daiyu isn't half as nice as Lao Lao's pavilion. Mulan pursed her lips, glancing at the lion worriedly. Where are we in Daiyu? She asked Ming Po. This is the 24th level. I'm afraid you're quite deep in King Yama's realm. Mulan's hand jerked, nearly dropping the cup onto her lap. The 24th level? Alarm flickered in Shang's eyes, but he composed himself quickly. Gracious Lao Lao, wouldn't you be so kind as to tell us the way to the gates? There's only one path out of Daiyu, Ming Po replied. I'll tell you after you drink. Mulan graced Ming Po with her best blank face. I already did. It's the best tea I ever had. Is it now? Ming Po fanned herself. If you truly drunk it, you wouldn't remember what the best tea was. Mulan's face grew hot. She stood, lunging to escape the pavilion. Stay, Ming Po said sharply. Paper panels unfolded like scrolls to cover the pavilion's open sides. At once the pavilion darkened, and Ming Po's eyes narrowed. Please, it's rude to refuse the hospitality of one's elders. Mulan swallowed. They were trapped. I know who you are, Mulan said through clenched teeth. You're not anyone's Lao Lao. You're the Lady of Forgetfulness. Ming Po rose from her seat. Her hooded eyes opened wide, unblinking. And you are the soldier who stole Captain Li Shang from the Tower of the Last Glance to Home. Now drink, or I will be forced to set my demons upon you. No. My tea is meant to be a consolation. I assure you it will be much more painful for both of you, if you do not drink. You will never make it to the 100th level. You're right, we won't. Mulan snatched the teapot from her hands and tossed the tea at the woman's face. Not if we stay here. Ah! Ming Po shrieked, her long white hair dripping with tea. Come on, Shang. Shang was already on his feet. He lifted a rosewood table and hurled it at one of the panels. The paper ripped, and as Shang tore his way through, Mulan smashed Shishi's teacup with her foot. The line blinked, stirring from Ming Po's spell. Get up, she shouted. Lao Lao is Ming Po. Shishi bolted to his feet and leapt out of the pavilion. Mulan followed, landing in one of the rose bushes. She pushed her way through the flowers and leaves to the brick path they found earlier. Behind her, Ming Po shouted furiously in a language Mulan didn't understand. She ignored it. They needed to find a portal out of this level and fast. Shang was one step ahead of her. This way, he said, heading north. Where's Shishi? He's... Mulan whirled around to make sure Shishi was still with them. He wasn't. She gasped, spotting him behind her. In the garden. The trees have him. Shishi dangled from the top of the tree, his golden fur nearly completely swathed by long sleeves of pointed green leaves. One crooked branch curled over Shishi's mouth, preventing him from roaring, but when the lion saw Mulan and Shang, he thrashed furiously. He swept his paws at every branch and dared to wrestle with them, his sharp claws digging into their arms and shredding their leaves. Another tree extended a warped hand toward Mulan. She jumped back. Ping! Shang's jaw tightened as he assessed the trees. He stomped on a branch before it could take hold of him. I'll take care of this. You find the way out. Mulan bounded away from the tree's clutches, skirting the edges of the rose bushes along Ming Po's courtyard. The pavilion and the pond were the only places untouched by Ming Po's monstrous trees. The Lady of Forgetfulness had to be behind the tree's attacks. She hadn't moved from her position on the steps of the pavilion, where she was still chanting those strange words. Stop it, Mulan yelled. Let Shishi go. For a second, Ming Po's dark eyes met Mulan's. She stopped shouting and snapped her fan closed, and the intensity of her gaze made Mulan wonder if she was actually considering Mulan's request. But then, her thin, wrinkled lips curled into a faint smile before she turned her back to Mulan and went inside the pavilion. Mulan tried to follow the Lady of Forgetfulness, but the pond began to bubble. Horns emerged from yellow and red eyes and the tips of newly sharpened spears. And now Mulan could guess whom Ming Po had summoned. The demons. The demons were coming.